Welcome to this ATA Insights webinar. Thank you for your ongoing interest and support of our webinar program. Today's session will begin in 2 minutes. ATA Insights Webinars is an online platform for the dissemination of professional renewable energy knowledge across international borders. Our aim is to democratize access to information, for innovation to spread faster, and to make the industry more competitive. And we do this through our online session, open to all our members. Every year we do more than 100 sessions with over 250 speakers, 50,000 attendees from more than 50 countries. To participate in the session today, use the chat on the right-hand side to introduce yourself, your company, and where you're joining from. Under the screen, you will find the Q&A box, where you can send your questions for the speakers. We will get to as many as we can today. We're recording this session, and we will send you a link to the materials in a few days. Please consider supporting our content creation for the webinar program. Contact us on the email on screen. Good afternoon, Fernando, and good afternoon, Aitor. Thank you very, very much for being here with us, where we're going to talk about Cerro Dominador, the project, the status of the project, what's happened there with you guys that have been involved in this project. So I'd like to first ask you to introduce yourselves, please, so that if anyone doesn't know you in the audience, then they can now. So Fernando, first, why don't you introduce yourself?
Okay. Hi, Belén. Thank you for having us in this webinar today. I am Fernando González. I'm the CEO of Cerro Dominador. Cerro Dominador is a hybrid CSP and PV project in the northern part of Chile.
Thank you very much. And this is a project that we're going to be talking about today. So, Aitor, please introduce yourself as well, and what have you done for Cerro Dominador?
Sure, Belén. Thanks to you and to ATA for inviting me today to join Fernando in this webinar. My name is Aitor Álava, and I'm head of infrastructure and energy for Natixis Bank in Latin America, based in New York. And I had the pleasure to work alongside Fernando and the broader Cerro Dominador team and EIG in setting up the financing of these transactions a few years ago that had a number of important challenges, but the good news is that today the project is a reality. So excited to join you two in this webinar.
Excellent. Okay, so let's start with the beginning. I think everyone is going to know this project because otherwise you wouldn't be in this webinar. However, tell us a little bit about the project, Fernando, and especially the status, because you had some really big news recently. How did it go? Just tell us a little bit really about the project and what's going on right now.
Yes, so basically we have two plants at our site, one photovoltaic plant, 100 megawatts, but the most interesting one is a CSP with tower, 110 megawatts. This is a plant that has one of the main characteristics is that it has 17 and a half hours of storage in molten salts. So basically, we can generate electricity 24/7. That's one of the key features, and I think that's one of the advantages that CSP has when we're talking about the energies of the future and when the energy is needed. The fact that we can generate electricity when it's needed, I think that makes it a big contributor to the decarbonization in many countries. So we're very excited when we announced about 2.5 weeks ago that we synchronized the turbine to the grid. That was a big milestone. That's when we started generating electricity at the plant, and it's a big milestone because in order for this plant to generate electricity, everything that is behind the system to heat the salts, the storage tanks, the steam generation, and the turbine, all of that needs to work. So reaching the synchronization is probably one of the most relevant milestones in this technology. So we did it a few weeks ago. We are now in a phase. We are going to do this in phases until we get to 100% capacity, but we are advancing very well and according to the plan. So we're very excited with this news.
Excellent. Thank you very much. If I remember rightly, the capacity factor of this particular project is really high, correct?
Yes, it's a little bit less than 90%. It's 80 something, 86, 87. So it's this plant was designed, as I was mentioning, with 17 hours of storage, but that doesn't mean that it only generates at night. This plant, Cerro Dominador, generates 24 hours a day. So during the day, we are generating electricity and also heating the salts. At night, obviously, we are not heating the salts, but we are also generating electricity. So that's why we can get to these very high levels of capacity factors.
So if I also remember rightly, or feel free, just to contextualize this a little bit for those that may not be so familiar with the Chilean situation, is that the demand of energy in Chile is very, almost unchanged through the 24 hours. Is that correct? Hence why they usually look for projects that, not usually, but they wanted projects back on the day that would kind of generate energy throughout. It doesn't change. It doesn't have a lot of ups and downs. Is that correct, or have I?
Well, you have the people that where you do see a little bit of fluctuation, but the big consumption in Chile is the mining industry that is very flat. So this is why this type of technology is ideal. Because at the end of the day, you want and you need to have electricity 24/7. You need to have electricity that is reliable, that is available when you need it, and that's why Cerro it's a big addition to the system, and it also adds flexibility with all these massive implementation of variable renewables like solar and photovoltaic. What happens is that you are creating periods where there's intermittency and there's no reliability, and some of that is being covered by gas, and now it will be covered by Cerro Dominador. When you look at a decade from now and the goals to be carbon neutral, you have two options. You use gas as a transition fuel to 100% renewables, or in such cases like Chile, you can skip that, so you don't need to burn more fossil fuel to get to a full transition. You can do that with CSP. So CSP can be providing the flexibility that the system needs to stabilize the grid.
Right. So this technology, especially when it's hybridized, as you mentioned, PV, what we do is it can be a peaker, it could be dispatchable as you like, but it also can be base load, and that's what is used for in Chile, and is now being connected to the grid. So a few questions specifically about the project, Fernando. What does this mean for Chile that this project is now online and generating, and what does it mean for the development of CSP as an industry in Latin America? Because of course this is the first time that we see a project of this size and scale and of this technology in Latin America. So what does it mean for Chile and for Latin America?
Sorry, I think this is a great thing for Chile. It's putting Chile at the forefront of this type of technology. It can turn Chile into a center for knowledge and research and development. And at the end of the day, it can start exporting all that knowledge to other countries in the region. So we are very excited to be the first ones. We expect to not be the only ones. We hope that people that see the success of Cerro and get more familiar with the plant will be interested in learning more and building new plants like this. Chile is an ideal country for this technology. So we expect to be opening the door for many more people investing in this technology. And then we're also, as you know, Chile has created this Institute of Clean Energy, where one of the areas of focus is energy, and we think that we're participating in that. We are offering our facilities to test and to share our knowledge with this institution, so Chile can start forming their own professionals on this industry. So it doesn't have to rely on professionals from other countries, and can start having their own.
Okay, we're starting to get the first questions, and I'm really glad. So guys in the audience, whether you're on YouTube or whether you are in the main site, please send your questions. My colleagues here are looking for them and they're passing them on. So please send your questions and we will make sure to answer as many as we can. The first question that we're getting is whether the 90% capacity factor refers to the entire plant, PV or CSP, or just the CSP part?
No, that's just the CSP plant. The PV plant, obviously, Chile is one of the best countries in the world for solar energy. Chile, our PV plant is having very high capacity factors, around 34-35%, which is unseen in other parts of the world. So, but I was referring to the CSP.
Thank you very much, Fernando. Okay, so moving along to other issues, this was not an easy project to take to completion. And, you know, I've known this, I've been there all along, you've been there also all along. And, you know, so my next question is, what were like the most difficult challenges, the challenges that you had to go through? Many of which, by the way, I'll take this opportunity to say, they were not Cerro Dominador's fault or Fernando's fault or EIG's fault, but, you know, things do happen in like long-term projects, you know. So what were the most, like the biggest challenges, and what are your lessons learned in order to then, you know, do it better the next time, or easier, or not have to face these many challenges?
Well, we thank you for clarifying that. It was not, we had to face these issues, and hopefully, and so far we have not been hit by a meteorite. But everything else happened to us. So we, well, this was a project that was developed by Abengoa. Abengoa did a very good job in designing and building this project, but then Abengoa had some financial issues, which resulted in the project being stopped and construction stopped. So we had to, when we took over, we had to find ways to make the project bankable, and then Aitor can talk about that. And for us to do that, we need to make sure that we had that we can keep the all the knowledge that Abengoa had available, that we would bring someone in to partner with Abengoa, and that was Acciona, who accepted the challenge of joining Abengoa, and we had to restart the construction, and we need to structure the agreement such that both the new joint venture can guarantee the whole operation of the plant. So Acciona had to come in and guarantee not only the part that they are building, but also the part that was built before. So and then we also faced, in terms of the financing, there was another project that was first in the list when you Google CSP, that was having problems and having to convince and explain that we took all the lessons learned from that failed project and incorporated that into our project. We need to give confidence to the banks that we know that we're doing and will bring this project to completion. So those were mainly the big challenges we had. We had also to keep some of the suppliers, the critical suppliers that were, when construction stopped, some of these suppliers were not paid. So we had to keep them alive because they were needed. They were going to be needed for the completion of the project. So we had to take a few critical decisions on putting more money to keep the project alive, even if we were not sure that the project would go forward. But then also, I mean, once we got the project financed, we started the construction. Then, as you know, last year we had the pandemic. Fortunately, we were able to implement all the safety measures and protect our people, but we kept the project open and construction progressing safely. But that had an impact on construction. So that's why it took us a little bit longer than expected, but we're very happy with the results.
Yes, the financial crisis was not your fault, Fernando, or like Cerro Dominador. You know, a lot of things happening there that changed everything. But it's actually amazing how far you've managed to come and how well you've managed to do. So congratulations, seriously, to the whole team, because this is really, really impressive. It's like you had everything against. So for desperate projects, Fernando will fix them for you. Just call him up.
Well,
he's your man. He's your man.
No. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm just a pretty face here. I have the best team in the world that made this happen. We have the best talent, people that has been involved in other CSP projects that work tirelessly to bring this forward and implement all the lessons learned in our projects. So the team made this possible.
Absolutely. I mean, you guys, as a common effort, you very well done, just generally. Okay, I'm going to ask a few questions from Aitor now, because financing was a major challenge. So I think I'm going to hop to that one. And don't worry, I've seen your questions. Please keep sending them. Mark, I'm going to ask your question, even though it's not going to be answered. Like Fernando's already laughing because he knows what I'm talking about. He advised me in advance, but anyway. So Aitor, so first I'm going to ask you, you guys came in like almost halfway through this project, in a very difficult situation when the restructuring, let me just say, of Abengoa. Tell us about, the project, the challenge, the lessons learned in the financial process for this particular project.
Yeah, sure. So we act as the lead bank in the financing, and if this project was one thing, was not an easy one. Was not an easy one. I would say that CSP is always more tricky than other type of power plants technology. Moreover, in this case, that was the first one in LATAM and probably was, I don't know, number 2, 3 in the Americas. So there was not a lot of know-how in the banking community covering the Americas about CSP. So that required definitely a lot of discussions with independent engineer, with banks, with investors. But I would say that the main challenges were a little bit also related to the woes of Abengoa. Abengoa was the majority shareholder. That part has a relatively easy fix, and that's when AIG decided to take the leadership and step up. What was more tricky was anything related to the EPC contract and the Abengoa technology behind this project. So regarding the EPC discussion, it became very obvious in the first discussion we had with AIG and Cerro Dominador. Our advice was that Abengoa is a company that probably is very strong when it comes to doing the designs, but they were in a financial situation that probably made that name not bankable. So there was a need to replace them. And it's not easy to replace an EPC contractor for CSP. Probably AIG had less than a handful of potential names, maybe I would say 3 that have enough credentials in CSP and also have enough solvency and financial strength. At the end, we're all very lucky that Acciona decided to come in to basically front Abengoa for the work that has been done before financial close, but also for the future work. So that was also very, very important. And also, we were able to find a way in which the project could benefit from the know-how of the Abengoa technology behind this project. In case there were difficulties, always having access to all that know-how and try to solve the problem. So I think a very integral part of bank assessment was obviously, construction risk, and for that there were important clauses in the EPC agreement that provides sufficient comfort to lenders regarding the, liquidated damages for delay and rebalancing of the base case depending on what is the outcome of the yield. That was very important. And that was basically the big issue. That we also have to invest a lot of time on what I said at the beginning is convincing, banks and also convincing our own credit committees, that the construction risk was going to go smooth and also the production. No, I mean, basically, I think overall there are around 50 CSPs in the world. And my sense is that, that the technology works very well. But the problem is probably to fine tune all the different elements of the power plant, and the question is how long is going to take for that to really work in conjunction. It's going to be 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. I think that the ramp up period is really the critical item here. But I think the technology on a global basis, I think most of the people kind of agree that it works. So it was very challenging. We were able to raise, I think, close to 700 million in terms of senior debt. It was a structure. Most of the liquidity came from financial institutions. We also structure a 15-year tranche that we placed with a couple of Natixis investors. We also have a Corfo tranche, we have an LC tranche. So all in all, it was close to, 750, 100 million of liquidity, which was a lot of liquidity. There were a lot of banks that initially could be interested into this, but also the fact that Abengoa was having issues was draining a little bit the liquidity because people were facing difficulties on the Abengoa side. So, finally we made it. I think we also should be very proud of that very successful closing, which was not easy at all. I'm very confident that there are going to be more CSPs. I think CSP makes a ton of sense. It doesn't make sense, I would say, in all the countries, but in Chile specifically, I think it does make sense. And probably, once we have a more stable, I would say, shareholding, a robust APC contractor, it's probably going to be much easier than what we have to go through Cerro Dominator.
My next question was going to be exactly that. Actually, no, Fernando, comment, please.
Yeah, I want to add one thing, that also in the financing was more complex, and the financing came for the most part from international banks. We wanted to work with local banks, but at that time there was another project in the market that was having problems, which reduced the availability of liquidity in Chile. So we were also affected by problems on other projects. But Natixis' work has been amazing in collecting everyone and bringing us to financial closing. So good on that. And then with respect to Acciona and Abengoa, I think it was great that Acciona joined. I think at the end of the day, both companies did an excellent job on building this plant. Each one brought their own experts on this, and the fact that we have synchronized without major issues, and the plant is working as expected now. It's honestly a testament of the good work that both companies have done in the construction of the plant. Just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you very much, Fernando. And in terms of now that these projects have combined, you both mentioned, there was other project that didn't go well, that everybody knows who we're talking about. We're not going to say it because you should know.
Same initials.
No, leave it. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's the same initials, but we don't want to talk about it. If that project made it harder, does Cerro Dominador make it easier now? Like, does it open doors for new things?
That's our hope. we want to prove by proving that the plant worked by running this process of synchronizing and getting to full capacity without major issues. I think that will bring confidence back on this technology. We had that convinced, we were convinced about that from the beginning, but now we need to show it, right? So we hope that this is a turning point for the technology. There are other projects that are being built right now, and hopefully we will all be, at the end of the day, it's an industry we all want the same for success on this. And this started also with Nord 3 in Morocco, right? So that was really a very good plant. So it's a trend to leave the troublesome CSP in the past and look forward with this technology.
So Aitor, do you have more than you did say that you think the future is going to be there, but do you have more interest in like a CSP technology and supporting new projects? Has this, I don't know if you like, give you more interest in keep on doing this work?
No, I mean, definitely. I mean, especially I will say in the case of LATAM, Chile, no, because why do I think that this thing? I mean, this technology has had in the past a little bit of bad press. One of the main challenges is the price. It's not a cheap technology, although I'm very hopeful that the new projects are going to be much more competitive than the old ones. But in the case of Chile, my view is that it makes a lot of sense. I mean, because Chile doesn't have oil and gas, so the only way for them to become independent from an energy point of view is to use renewables. Probably their biggest source of energy is the sun. They have one of the best irradiations in the world. So that makes sense. Chile is completely, embarked into the, energy transition, green renewables. So, the commissioning coal. So they're going to grow on renewables a lot. However, when you grow in renewables, you start introducing issues into the grids. And this is where CSP, can play a very important role by, adding the storage capacity that everybody is talking about, batteries and other fancy solutions. And there is already a solution with molten storage that can be, attached to a CSP, no? So I think for Chile, as a country, it makes a lot of sense. Maybe in other countries that they have, access to other sources of energy, probably will make less sense. But I'm a true believer that, in Chile, there are going to be more opportunities in the future, and Natixis as an institution, we're ready to join any sponsors that want to develop those projects. We think in Chile they make a ton of sense.
Okay, so I have a question for you guys regarding the new entrants into the market. You both mentioned the fact that the EPC market at the time was really tight. There was only a few EPCs with the know-how, but this has since changed pretty significantly. Newcomers, which now or very soon are going to be bankable potentially. So the question is, I suppose, Fernando, starting with you, because I'm sure that these are things that you're already considering. Is this going to be? How is this going to change the market essentially? And then the question for you, Aitor, is: do you think these are bankable? Because I think I don't know if we are going to see a near future where the same EPCs are going to be in the industry. We're going to see complete change of EPCs. Anyway, Fernando, what is your thinking process in here? What's the future look like in this area? We have to be quite political here.
No, I think so. I like to answer this by also mention something that address something that Aitor mentioned. So when we started this, when we had to talk about the technology, there were two challenges that we faced. One is technology doesn't work, and then the second one is technology is expensive. So that's it. It makes no sense to hide those questions. And those are the questions that everyone has. Everyone asks the same things, and we are trying to address both at Cerro Dominador. The first one, obviously, we're showing with facts, right? The fact that the plant is up and running, is operating. It's helping move away from the travel projects in the past. So we are proving that the technology works. Now, with respect to pricing, well, first we need to remember that Cerro was won a public competitive auction. So the Cerro project was built because there was a public auction where we participated and we beat other technologies. So we won these contracts on a competitive auction. Now prices have changed, and we are working to, and I think we are there in terms of being competitive in terms of pricing. We are in the ballpark on where the market is going, at least in Chile. That came as a result of some changes in the design. Now, not focusing on a CSP that operates 24/7, but just having PV operating during the day and CSP at night. So those design changes can make us design the CSP hybrid much more competitive. Now, with respect to your questions on contractors, well, I think that as people get more familiar with the technology, I think new contractors will come up, right? I still think that the old contractors will stay. I think there will be, we're going through a crisis, but I think the old contractors, the 3 or 4 more common names on this technology will continue doing CSP. But obviously there's the Chinese factor, right? And Chinese contractors are going to be part of this one way or another. I think China has built probably more CSP in the last few years than any other country, right? So, and the question is, there's a learning curve that they will go through, that they are going through now, and then they will become a player in the market, which I think is good. I mean, competition forces all of us to have to think more creatively, and we face that issue in Chile. Chile, unlike other countries, does not have any specific rule for CSP. We have to compete with plants that are fossil, plants that are intermittent, plants that are completely amortized, and those are the rules of the game. So we had to find ways to offer a value to our clients in a different way. So price, obviously nobody's going to select you if you are much more expensive, but there are other variables that we can bring to the table that can put us in a very good competitive position.
And I think Fernando, one of the things you mentioned, it's very important, and probably this is a comment for regulators, is that many times these tenders are just won on the price of energy, but it's not the same mega as if it comes from a kind of base load power plant than from somebody that can introduce instability in the grid, no? Because at the end of the day, you have a base load renewable, you're saving on transmission costs, on transmission investment, because you have a more stable grid, no? So probably there is a need also for regulators to reflect that, no, in the way tenders are built, because I don't think they're measuring everybody by the value they're adding to the grid, no? So that's
absolutely. There is this mantra, this thing that is sacred, which is called being technology agnostic. I think we need to go beyond that and being technology agnostic for the service you want to receive. So if you want to receive base load power that's renewable, you need to give incentives or allocate value to those who can provide that. Not CSP. There are other technologies that can provide the same thing. So pump storage, geothermal, all of that. You don't have to build something for CSP. You have to do something for the services and the type of the quality of the electricity you need on the grid. And if the objectives and the regulation are not aligned, you will not get there. Right now, the incentives are to build, put diesel plants, right? So diesel plant is fantastic, it's cheap, but it's very expensive to operate, and it's carbon based, right? So if you want to be if you want to work towards a decarbonized matrix and a clean matrix, you have to change the regulation to put value in the technologies that are clean, that can provide those services.
My observation on this is that I feel like I have been talking about value of ancillary services, of firmness for the last 10 years. And now when people talk about batteries, they're having this argument once again, but they rely solely on that because they don't come up with new energy. So they're having this argument full on now with the regulators to understand this is what has a value, you have to pay for it. So I think if anything, it's helping our cause, all of this battery storage at the moment talk.
Yeah,
because
I think the batteries
now,
are great, but if you want to store big volumes of
for a long time,
energy, batteries does not give you the solution. Batteries are, well, first, they are more expensive than CSP, and second, they have a limited capacity in terms of hours and volume. So I think there's room for everyone. I'm not saying we are the only solution. So you have to.
No, totally. But we've been saying this value thing for how long? And it's been, but this is cheaper. Yeah, but we actually give you energy whenever you need it. Yeah, but this is cheaper. And now the tune is changing, and it's literally all of these energy storage guys, the battery guys are going there going, you gotta pay me. I add all this value. And we're like, yeah, we've been saying this for the past 10 years.
It's hard. I mean, everyone looks at some companies look at the P&L for this quarter, right? So everyone is looking on the short term, but someone at the national level needs to start thinking long term. And these plants and plants that can provide these things are not built overnight. So you need to keep that in mind, right? Otherwise, you'll be stuck with cheap solutions until the things break.
Totally.
And maybe a way to do that is to incentivize this kind of technology. Maybe in the case of Chile, will be to review a little bit the way the capacity price is set, and maybe that's a way to add some additional revenue to this kind of technologies which are base load, and that can put everybody a little bit
payment or something.
Yeah,
potentially. The thing is, every regulator has to decide, right? But without seeing those numbers, it's really hard. Especially one of the issue seems to be everything is very short term, is what Fernando was saying. No one is really willing to make like longer term, and then it's much harder for the finance guy to crunch the numbers. Either this would be something that you can probably understand well. We have a couple of questions here. One is, how is the payment for power and energy? Was it an auction process? And the answer is yes, it was an auction, correct, Fernando? And the CSP Plan 1, also in a context where the price of energy was really, really high, and they were looking for 24/7 energy, correct?
Yeah, at that time, the auction was for energy 24/7. We think there should be some of that in future auctions. I think when you, we are participating in some private auctions, and people want electricity 24/7. So if it's hard to see why we are still breaking into blocks. I think there should be a portion of that that's offered 24/7. Few people can be happy to have electricity 8 hours a day. Everyone wants to turn the switch on and have electricity. So I think the demand is there. So it's a matter of just making sure that some of the auctions, which at the end of the day is what drives these infrastructure projects, there should be a portion allocated to offerings 24/7 that can be supported, right? So you have to prove that you can provide that.
And one question here that I know you're not going to answer, but Mark Mijos did ask, so you see it's not just me. What is the price point at which you believe necessary either as a standalone CSP test plant or a hybrid plant for the next plant to be built in Chile. So how about, because you cannot answer this, you tell us what is the usual level or the usual price average that we are seeing in similar tenders at the moment? Like, or in the last tenders, what was the cutoff price? Something like that can give us an idea of what the prices are like right now.
We are confident that we can be very competitive providing electricity 24/7.
I love that man. Like, seriously,
Please.
he's like such a politician.
Yeah, I mean, I have to compete with people that have plants that have been operating for 60 years, right? Plants that have been
It's tough
amortized.
work.
So it's very hard. So it's price is the only way I have to participate in this. So I'm not going to say more than we are being very competitive, and that's why we are winning contracts in the market. So I'm confident that we'll be in a much better position by the end of the year.
So there are some tenders this year, right? And they will become public at some point this year.
Right, you will see that. Yes.
Excellent. There is a few questions here that are quite technical about salt and pumps, and I just wanted to let know the people who sent the questions through that we have a lot of technical sessions where the people there would be delighted to answer those questions, but fortunately, neither Fernando nor Aitor are people that are like in day-to-day very technical issues that might not be able to answer them. So I'm going to pass them by because, we're probably not going to be able to do them justice, really. But I do have the right people in other events, the other webinars that will be able to answer them. Someone here just says this is an extraordinary project and that they believe that you should try and leave a message clear down to the people who use that energy, that they're using energy from Cerro Dominador. I think it's a nice comment, so I wanted to just pass it along. But it's not exactly a question. Here, another question. What are the next steps for Cerro Dominador developing CSP technology worldwide? So maybe talk to us about Chile. You've already said that you're looking. The rest of LATAM, elsewhere, maybe, I don't know. Tell us.
Listen, I think we want to. We're now currently focusing in Chile. We think that there are other opportunities in other parts of the world, the south part of Peru, the northern part of Argentina, Mexico, and obviously the U.S. U.S. is a big market, and it, from my point of view, there's a big need of going back to CSP, right? So I think that will be a key market. And then there are other parts of the world. South Africa has CSP, and it's good. Other parts in the southern part of Africa are also good. Australia, we will evaluate that. Hopefully, in the next few years, we can do something, but we want to do slowly and steady, right? Slow and steady.
Makes sense.
That's what we did. We want to make sure that we focus on Cerro. We want to develop and build new projects in Chile, and then we'll move from there.
Okay, so I thought for you, if for companies that may be looking at replicating this, the CSP technology, Cerro Dominador technology in other countries across the Latin American region, what should they consider, when they look at it from the financing, the project, the bankability point of view?
I think one of the key challenges for any CSP is surrounding the technology and the construction risk. I think it's very important to have a strong sponsor and a very credible and solvent EPC contractor. I think that is key. Then, I think for this kind of complex technologies and taking into account that, generally speaking, the LATAM market is a contracted market, I think it will be important also to have some level of contracted revenues. I'm not saying that it has to be fully contracted like in the case of Cerro, but I will say a large portion of the production should be, I will say, contracted. And also it's important to analyze the different dynamics in other countries, no? Because maybe other countries in the regions don't have the same needs as the case of Chile. Maybe they have access to gas, or maybe they're still in the early stages of the renewable development. So maybe just, they don't have a lot of renewables, just jump into a sea might be too early. I don't know. I mean, in the Americas, I clearly see Chile as a very strong candidate to do more. I agree with Fernando regarding the US. I think in the US, there needs to be a rethink a little bit about CSP going forward. And let's see how the other countries in Latin America start developing this. But the needs are different. Peru, Brazil, Colombia don't have the same needs as Chile, no? So that has to be put into perspective. But I will say, from a financing point of view, it's very critical, the sponsorship / EPC. And I will strongly also recommend to have a good level of revenues which are contracted, that can help maybe to anchor a portion of the financing, being contracted. I mean, doing a fully merchant CSP, that might be a little bit tricky. Although they have this, if they have a storage, they have this great way to store energy and profit from the pricing arbitrage between day and night. So.
There is a question here about Cerro Dominador. It says, given the risk factors of Cerro Dominador, I guess the project finance was on the expensive side. He says, I guess, I'm guessing too. Can project finance be repackaged or refinanced? Are there other performance metrics that if hit, lower the cost of the financing package? So what opportunities are there to refinance the plant once it's working?
I mean, there are always two obvious markets to finance any project, not just CSP. One is the bank market, the other one is the bond market, and the bond market can be more in a private placement fashion or more like a public bond. So you always have those two markets. I think those two markets serve different needs and different stages of development of any project, not only CSP. I will say that, for a project during construction phase, especially if it's a complex construction coming with a difficult history like Cerro, I think, the answer was obvious. It had to go through the bank market. I think banks are more accustomed to, issues, to heavy structuring, to, multiple disbursements. So that's why, Cerro chose the bank route. The transaction is, has reached COD, and it's after the ramp-up period. Obviously, the bond market offers things that maybe the bond markets have more difficulty, namely, I would say, tenor. So, probably, any project, when it's completed, they should probably look at getting refinanced in the bond market. So that's a little bit dynamic. You always have those two markets there. It's true that in the case of CSP, first, banks are less used to CSP than other technologies, and that's a barrier. And that's also the case for investors, no? I mean, there needs to be a very strong effort to educate, to teach the investors. And for example, that's something we already went through in the initial financing, because we brought two investors from Asia that put 100 million in Cerro Dominador, and there were a lot of calls and questions and explanations that we have to give them in order for them to feel comfortable about the technology. So
yeah, and this is something like anything else, right? The more plants like this, the more people are familiar with this, and the less premium they charge for it, right? So it's the expectation is that for future projects, the risk premium would be slightly lower, and that will continue going down as more plants are built.
Thank you both. Aitor, here there's a question for you. He says, how would you assess the risk under the lender's point of view for PV and batteries versus CSP plus TES, considering that batteries for long hours are not quite proven, and CSP still has this perception of being expensive and complex? So if you were to compare?
I mean, it's not very easy to compare. I mean, obviously, we're looking at transactions which are PV with batteries. I mean, definitely that's a bankable solution. However, probably the scale of those projects in terms of storage capacity are different from what a CSP can offer you. Also on the batteries, the question is how long are they going to last? And that depends a lot on the number of cycles in which you recharge the battery. But it's definitely a bankable solution. So I would say that probably the PV plus battery has a simple construction, maybe operation than a CSP. You have the bigger question about the need to eventually replace the batteries after some years, and how many years are the batteries going to last. Exactly. I think in the case of the CSP with the storage part it's cleaner than the batteries. Obviously, you have a more tricky construction and you have a more tricky operation, but it can be done. It can be financed. I mean, we finance, Cerro Dominador in the midst of everything that could go wrong, going wrong, and finally, we were able to get it fixed. So, I think they're different, and both are definitely bankable and can be financed.
Thank you very much. Okay, I've just selected like 3 extra questions that I'm going to ask, and they're like a mix of everything. So one of them, Fernando, talks about the local content, local employment, and in particular, there was a question about molten salts as well. That was a different question, but it's quite related. Since there is so many molten salts and they're all SQMs, I think that's an easy answer. 100% of the salts were local, very local. But what about, do you have any insights into the rest of the...
No, in terms of local content, I don't have the answer. Again, you have to remember this is the first plant in the country, so hopefully as more plants are being built, a lot more local content industries can be developed around that. I was mentioning earlier that I was speaking with someone that produces mirrors, and he said, I cannot produce the quality that you need because I don't have the volume. But if there's a series of plants being built, I'm willing to invest so I can manufacture the products here. So and I think that's very relevant when we're talking about sustainable recovery and bringing people, giving opportunities to local people instead of importing. And I think the CSP can have a big differentiation factor with respect to other technologies on that. But one thing that we did, that we were very insistent in the project, was local employment, right? So we put some conditions to our contractors on hiring people from the local communities. We received a number of awards for our Mirrors program that employs women from the local community. We have a very high percentage of women that were working at the plant, and those women were working during construction, but now are transitioning and are being trained to stay during the operation. So there are a lot of benefits in terms of employment and benefit to the local economy with this technology as compared with others. Obviously, the construction period is much longer than a wind or a PV project. So, and we employed a lot more people. So in our project, we had 1,200, 1,500 people for the good part of 2.5 years, right? And even now that we are in the commissioning phase, we had 400 people, right? And then in the operations, we're going to have around 80 people. So there are big benefits for local communities, for the industry, and for local employment of this technology. So it's for someone at the local government or at the national level, I think this should be part of the equation. We are bringing employment. We are bringing opportunities for local companies.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah. Thank you very much. This is a very good point because it's not only office jobs, of people pushing paper. We're talking about people actually working there that are local, and other industries, reality, like you don't need that many people in the day-to-day for O&M. So that's a big difference. My next question was about renewable hydrogen. And we kind of talked about this before in the preparation. We kind of skirted around because it's not necessarily like a competitor technology. It's a long time until it develops. But there was two questions here about whether, you're looking at renewable hydrogen in the future, whether your plans to go into it. There is like two things going on in here. On the one hand, it could be literally net consumers, so people who require CSP because they need renewable energy at night in order for it to be green hydrogen. But also, there is the idea that a very long-term renewable hydrogen could potentially be a long-term storage and therefore take away the need for, CSP. So I just want to leave it up there with the two of you. I know you have opinions, so Fernando, go ahead.
It depends on the country, right? So every country is different, right? So we are working with a company to look at a potential pilot to produce hydrogen, and some countries will need that. I mean, some countries do not have the solar resource that Chile has, and hydrogen could be a good solution. I think for Chile, using electricity to produce hydrogen, to burn it, to produce electricity, from my point of view, it doesn't make sense. I think hydrogen could be a good opportunity for Chile to create an export industry, to export to Asia. I think the conditions to produce hydrogen are probably the best in the world in Chile. And the issue that you have is, and I think where the CSP can have a big role is, right now, the electrolyzers, if you are using electrolyzers with PV, okay, that's fine, but you have an infrastructure that you can use 8 or 9 hours a day. Imagine if you can have that technology working 24/7. The volume that you can produce will be much higher. The cost obviously will be a little bit higher. Obviously, CSP is much more, it's more expensive than PV, but you can amortize the electrolyzer, which is a big part of the cost, into more production. So I think there is an opportunity. I think we're doing analysis. We're working with other companies to develop a pilot, and we see a big future to produce hydrogen for transportation or for export. But that's probably for a longer term.
Aitor?
I think, the debate is not if it's CSP or hydrogen as a ways to store energy. I think both solutions provide its value to an energy sector, and I think both are compatible. Depending on the country and the market, one might make more sense than the other one. And even in some instance, both could try to work together. As Fernando was saying, CSP can give a much bigger order of magnitude regarding the production of hydrogen. So, definitely hydrogen, it's something that is going to be there and is going to be developed, is attracting a lot of investment. And I'm sure, there are going to be a lot of hydrogen developments in the future. But I don't think it's one or the other. I think depending on the situation, one might make more sense than the other one.
Yes, so we'll leave the issue of renewable hydrogen. There is so much hype around it now that I think it's going to take a while for it to come down and realize what's actually there, but we'll see. For sure, I think it's more of an opportunity than a challenge, if I'm honest. And the last question for you guys is one sent by a good friend via YouTube. It says, what is your forecast for CSP in Chile in the short term? And we'll close with that. It doesn't have to be but what do you hope that will happen now? Fernando, go ahead.
I hope, I don't know, in the next 5 years, 3 or 4 or 5 CSP plants are built in Chile. And I hope ideally, we would like to have a big part of that, but it would be good to have someone else. So competition is good. So hopefully CSP will become, as some of the forecasts from the Chilean government shows the big driver in electricity production 10 years from now. So we need to start working on that right away.
Excellent. Aitor, do you have anything to add here?
No, I mean, also excited and looking forward to more CSPs in Chile. As I've said during the webinar, I think for Chile, it's a technology that makes a lot of sense. So, if it's 5 in 3 or 4 years, Fernando said, fantastic. If it's 3, that's also good for me. So
yeah, that would be better for sure. Prepare the money then. Prepare the money. Fernando's coming for it, and I'm sure a lot of people in the audience as well is looking for opportunities. Thank you very much, Fernando. Thank you very much, Aitor, for sitting with us talking about this. In the end, we've taken a lot more time than I expected in the first place, but it's been a very interesting conversation. And I always appreciate when people talk openly about issues, that they had in situations. I know, barring the issue with the price, because I completely understand, Fernando, you can't say those things. So thank you very much and see you next time.
thank you.
Thank you, Belén.